The wind howled through the jagged peaks like 1,000 voices crying out in despair. Snow blanketed the mountains in a frozen, silent grip, turning the world into a landscape of stark, merciless beauty. In the heart of this desolation, a lone cabin stood like a stubborn monument against the storm. Inside, a man carved from the wilderness itself, weathered, silent, unyielding, sat by the fire, staring into the flames. His life had been a lifetime of solitude, every day a mirror of the one before. He had known hardship, loss, and the relentless ache of loneliness, yet he had never known companionship. The mountain had been his companion, the wind his confidant, and the echoing silence his constant companion. He had lived this way for decades, a hermit who had learned the language of isolation. And yet, the night that snow fell heavier than ever, that silence was shattered by the timid, desperate knock at his door. Before I continue, if you believe in kindness and second chances, don't forget to like this video, comment your thoughts, share this story, and subscribe to the channel Wild West Tale. The knock was soft at first, almost hesitant, as if the world itself had whispered caution into the hands that rapped against his wooden door. The mountain man rose slowly, muscles aching from years of labor, and opened the door. Standing there were two women, their faces pale and drawn, their clothing ragged from travel and cold. Their eyes held a mixture of fear, despair, and a quiet plea for mercy that reached deep into the man's heart, a heart he had long convinced himself was empty. He could see the remnants of grief etched into their features, as if life had stripped them of every comfort and left them bare. These were widows, abandoned by fate, wandering in search of shelter, warmth, and perhaps, the faintest flicker of hope. The man hesitated. His instincts screamed caution, his life had been one of self-preservation and distance. Yet something in their gaze, a haunting echo of the humanity he had long denied, stirred a long-dormant part of him. He stepped aside and allowed them in, watching as they entered the small cabin with quiet reverence, as if stepping into sacred ground. The fire crackled, throwing shadows across their faces, highlighting the lines of sorrow that told stories he could almost understand. For hours, he watched them, listening to the soft, trembling voices recounting a life that had been cruel and unforgiving. And for the first time in decades, he felt the strange, unsettling warmth of empathy, a sensation that made him realize how hollow his solitary existence had truly been. Life in the mountains was brutal, and the winter only magnified every difficulty. There were days when the man had to risk frostbite to gather wood or hunt for food, and nights when the howling wind threatened to tear the cabin apart. Now, with two fragile lives depending on him, every task carried a weight he hadn't anticipated. He struggled to balance his own survival with theirs, often moving silently while they slept, ensuring the fire remained lit, the roof secured, and the provisions carefully rationed. The widows, though grateful, carried their own silent despair. They had been through loss and betrayal, and while the warmth of shelter was comforting, it could not immediately mend the wounds life had inflicted. Yet slowly, day by day, bonds began to form in that harsh, unforgiving environment. The mountain man discovered that kindness was not a weakness. In feeding the widows, listening to their stories, and sharing the harsh labor of survival, he found a purpose he had never known. The widows, in turn, began to breathe life into the cabin, bringing small touches of humanity, a knitted scarf here, a carefully brewed tea there, the soft hum of a song that reminded them of better times. The mountain, once a symbol of isolation, began to feel like a sanctuary. And yet, the past never truly releases its grip. Memories of lost loved ones, the bitterness of solitude, and the scars of abandonment crept into the quiet moments, threatening to undo the fragile peace that had begun to bloom. Storms raged through the peaks, testing the limits of the cabin and the endurance of its inhabitants. One particularly fierce night, when the snow piled high and the wind threatened to topple the old roof, the man realized how dependent he had grown on these two souls. Their presence, once an intrusion, had become essential. The widows, too, had begun to trust him, not just for survival, but as someone who could carry the weight of shared grief without judgment. The crackling fire, the muffled howls of the storm, and the small acts of kindness formed a tapestry of connection that none of them had dared hope for. Yet life was not easily tamed, and challenges continued to test the mountain man's resolve. Food ran low, a hunting expedition failed, and despair threatened to seep back into the cabin like the cold air under the door. In these moments, the mountain man wrestled with doubt, haunted by the fear that his heart, unpracticed in care and affection, might falter under the strain. But the widows, ever resilient, reminded him of the strength found in unity. They took what little they could and made it stretch, sharing warmth, laughter, and even sorrow, until the cabin was less a prison and more a home. As winter passed, the snow melted into the rushing streams of spring, revealing a landscape transformed by the passing seasons. With the thaw came growth, not just of the earth, but of the lives within that mountain cabin. Flowers bloomed in cracks of stone and earth, the fire in the hearth burned brighter, and hearts that had been hardened by loss began to soften. The widows learned to smile again, their laughter echoing against the mountains, a melody that filled the spaces the wind had once dominated. The mountain man, too, discovered a capacity for love and companionship he had never imagined. The lessons of solitude had not been wasted, they had prepared him to protect, to nurture, and to embrace the fragile beauty of human connection. The three of them forged a rhythm together, each contributing what they could. They hunted, gathered, cooked, and repaired, all under the watchful gaze of the endless peaks. Nights were spent by the fire, sharing stories of the past, dreams of the future, and the quiet acknowledgement that life, though harsh and unforgiving, could still hold wonder. Bonds strengthened, wounds healed, and the echoes of grief were replaced by whispers of hope. The mountain man, once a figure of unyielding solitude, became a guardian of life and love, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, the mountain man stood at the cabin door, watching the widows work in the small garden they had nurtured. He whispered to himself, the words carrying a weight of truth and revelation, "I lived alone my whole life, but I never truly lived until I welcomed them." The wind, which had once been a lonely companion, now carried with it a song of renewal, of second chances, of love rediscovered in the most unexpected places. Life, as they all knew, would not always be easy. Winters would return, storms would rage, and challenges would rise to test their unity. But they had discovered a profound truth. Even in the most desolate of places, compassion, trust, and courage could illuminate a path forward. The cabin, once a symbol of isolation, now represented the power of kindness, the beauty of human connection, and the strength found in opening one's heart to those in need. Months turned into years, and the mountain man, the widows, and the land around them became inseparable. Travelers who happened upon the cabin spoke of a place where warmth and humanity thrived in the harshest conditions. The story of the mountain man who had lived alone his whole life, yet had chosen to shelter two abandoned widows, became legend, a reminder that no heart is too hardened to feel, no life too desolate to be redeemed. Near the end of a long day, as the sun dipped behind the peaks and the fire glowed softly inside the cabin, the mountain man reflected on all that had changed. He had faced fear, hardship, and the ghosts of his past, yet in opening his door and his heart, he had found something more valuable than survival, a life filled with connection, love, and meaning. And now, he could face the future not as a solitary figure in a frozen wilderness, but as part of a family forged through adversity, compassion, and the courage to trust again. If this story touched your heart, please engage with this video, like, comment, and share it with someone who needs a reminder of hope. Let us know in the comments how acts of kindness have changed your life, or if this story gave you a glimpse of the beauty that comes from second chances. The mountain man's life, once defined by solitude, had become a testament to the human spirit. His heart, once closed to the world, now beat in unison with the lives of those he had welcomed, proving that even in the harshest landscapes, love, hope, and courage could thrive. And as the stars emerged over the peaks, casting a gentle glow across the snow, one truth remained undeniable: no one is ever truly alone when compassion finds its way through the coldest night.